Hello, my name is Eric Becker, and today I'm going to talk to you about stereotypes and discrimination that can accompany stereotypes. I'm going to provide specific examples of stereotypes by examining the TCU culture. Be warned, these are just stereotypes and are not meant to be taken offensively.
I want to start off by quickly defining a few terms. The first term is stereotype. According to Merriam-Webster, stereotype is defined as to believe unfairly that all people or things with a particular characteristic are the same. The second term that I want to define is marginalize, which is defined as to put or keep someone in a powerless or unimportant position within a society or group. TCU is a diverse international community. Now, with that being said, the campus is riddled with stereotypes. Unfortunately, TCU is fairly limited when it comes to individual classification. There are three main classifications within the TCU population. The first classification that I will briefly touch on is the Greek affiliate. Within the Greek culture itself, there are many stereotypes depending on what fraternity or sorority. The overarching stereotype that has been in place for the last 50 years or so is the social party guy who's always drunk and skips class because he was at his fraternity brother's last night. Greek life, in general, especially at TCU, has worked very hard to rid themselves of this stereotype in the last few years. The next stereotype we have here at TCU is the GDI. GDI stands for Goddamn Independent. Someone who is a GDI decided not to affiliate with a Greek organization. Unfortunately, here at TCU, they can be marginalized by the large Greek culture for not being seen as fratty. The GDI is stereotyped as someone who is above the social influence of the Greek system, an independent individual who has their own ideals and interests aside from the Greek community. The final big stereotype that we have here at TCU is the athlete. The typical stereotype is the 300-pound football player that could eat you for breakfast if you rub them the wrong way. They are seen as celebrities by the student body. Unless you're having a bad season, then you can have been instantly hated by the whole campus. So what I want to talk about now is the concept of the cafeteria. The cafeteria is a congregation of individuals within a culture where all individuals from every group will come together and create some sort of social experience. Whether you're in a high school cafeteria, a college cafeteria, or a cafeteria in your workplace, you're able to walk around and pinpoint certain social groups based on stereotypical ideas. TCU is no different. So what is the point of me talking about all this? The problem that occurs with all these stereotypes is that it pigeonholes individuals into certain social stigma based on their affiliation. It overlooks the individuality of each person and in turn places someone in a box that may or may not be true. The old adage, never judge a book by its cover, comes to mind. If you see someone wearing Greek letters, then you are automatically going to assume they behave a certain way until you're either proven right or wrong by communicating and interacting with them. What I want to talk about now is something that has affected me personally since coming to TCU, and that is discrimination and stereotyping within the Greek system. There's so much stereotyping within the Greek culture. I personally have been affected by it, and I'm sure many others have as well. The fact that you can be judged a certain way by the Greek letters you wear was such a confusing and novel concept to me. Here's some brief examples of stereotypes within the Greek system. If I were to ask about an SAE, what would you say? You might think of wealthy oil families, generally from the Houston area or other parts of Texas. The general stereotype here is that after college they go and work for their father's business, so they don't have to work hard in school. This may be true for some, but how does it affect the majority? How does this affect the SAE who isn't from Texas, who isn't wealthy, who won't work for their father, and who works hard to get good grades? Do they end up acting like the stereotype, or do they feel marginalized by the stereotype for not being part of that stereotype? Another example of a stereotyped fraternity here at TCU is Phi Cap. They're generally considered to be the meathead fraternity, mostly from California and spends a lot of time in the gym. So once again, if you aren't from California or work out all the time, how does one cope with being placed under that stereotype? One final Greek stereotype that we have here at TCU is Beta. Beta is the newest fraternity on campus, so they automatically receive the most amount of discrimination. The typical Beta is someone who's very concerned with their grades, not exactly the manliest of men, and still get referred to as being an independent. Here's a short story of the first time I felt marginalized and discriminated against by the TCU community. One day during my first semester of freshman year, me and my friends were walking over on Hewlin Street. One of us was wearing our fraternity shirts, and probably in a span of 10 or 15 minutes, 3 different cars drove by with completely unrelated people, and they all managed to slow down, roll down their window, and yell profanity at us and continue to make fun of us. For the first time in my life, I felt marginalized and discriminated against by the different outgroups, yet we are all part of the same in-group as the TCU student body. I realize how blessed I am to be able to say that this was the first time I felt discriminated against in my life. I couldn't even imagine what it'd be like to grow up being discriminated against for your race, religion, or ethnicity. It took me quite a long time to get over that and just ignore what other people said. We are all TC students, and the thought of being discriminated against because of the letters I wore is just ridiculous.
Another way that the stereotypes can be damaging to individuals is that it creates a vicious cycle in regards to self-fulfilling prophecy. If the world tells you that you're supposed to act and behave a certain way based on a stereotype, then you start to believe in that stereotype to be true, thus behaving and acting in a way to fulfill that stereotype, which in turn only reinforces that stereotype. Unfortunately, these stereotypes are not only present within the TCU culture, but many US colleges in general, and even more damaging throughout the globe. So the question we must ask ourselves is, what can we do? What can we do to overcome these stereotypes and give back to an individual's personal identity and not just see them as part of a certain group?
There is no quick fix. No one can just magically wave a wand and make stereotypes disappear. Stereotypes are always going to be present, or at least for a long time. But what we can do is look past them by using competent communication. By using competent communication, we're able to interact and communicate with individuals and see them as their own unique individual rather than a common stereotype. You have absolutely no idea what an individual is truly about until you get to know them. It is unfair to judge someone based on their race, ethnicity, religion, or even their Greek letters. One concept that we talked about in class that really stuck with me was the idea of the picture frame. Everyone has a certain picture in their mind of the way things should be. When there's a picture that doesn't make sense, a red flag goes up in the back of our mind and we second guess it. The only way we can understand those pictures that we don't understand is to get the story behind that picture, and most of the time, the only way to get that story is through communication. And once we have the story, the picture may no longer seem as odd to us and will eventually become normal. In conclusion, stereotypes are everywhere. They are present in the books we read, the movies we watch, in our cafeteria, and in our classrooms. So instead of reinforcing these stereotypes by judging individuals before even getting to know them, take some time every day to go out and get to know people that you never would have talked to before. Who knows, you may find out something interesting about the person. They may become a great friend, but more importantly is the first step in the process of overcoming stereotypes. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope that you learned a little something about stereotypes, not just here at TCU, but in general, and how damaging they can be to an individual.